Well, I've made some changes to the rules, but I'll show you some of the aliases that I've created first. So we started off with this one, which is, it has the potential to become a group. At the moment, it's just pointing to one specific IP, but I've created another one. I've called it blocked IPs, and it's a series of IP addresses. So this is just like a starting group, really. It's a list of the RFC 1980 and IP addresses. I should add in all the extra ones that get reserved and are being blocked on the internet. If I want to block multicast, I'll put that in, for instance, as well. But there's a series of IP addresses, not just these ones that you should block access to, but I've done these just given the time frame that we're in. Ports, I've created an actual alias for ports. So I've got one called Firewall Ports. So it's a group of ports. We've got 443. And then I've got 5 3s in there, because what I want to do is I actually want to remove that anti-lockout rule. I want to be more specific because it has the risk of like spoofing, for example. So I haven't done anything on the WAN rules, but on the LAN rules, I've created a rule up at the top here, and that's allowing TCP access specifically for devices on the LAN network to get access to the firewall itself using that alias of ports. So far it's 443, and then there was 5 3s there, because we're going to basically change the management port for this firewall, and then we'll be able to take this rule out, and so we can replace it with this more specific one. Then below that we've got the rule that's allowing access to DNS servers. I mean, although granted there is only one at the minute. And then what I've done is I've put in an actual explicit block to blocked IPs. So these are, at the moment, they're just RFC 19 IP addresses. The intention is to stop anything in the network, or specifically on this LAN anyway, getting access to my internal network, for instance. I mean, there is another firewall that segregates the actual lab from the my real network, but either way, I'm trying to put as many layers into the security as I possibly can. So it's a case of this rule goes just below these two, because these are using private IP addresses here. And then anything that comes after this refers to internet access. So for instance, I've got a rule which allows access to port 80 for web servers, port 443 for web servers. So that's the unsecure port. That's the secure port for encrypted traffic. Now Google, if you use Google's web browser, they actually use UDP as well as TCP. I could potentially combine the two. You can actually do that within a rule. You can specify the protocol as TCP and UDP if you wanted to. Just for the fact that this one happens to be known as Quick, I'm just keeping the two separate, just for giggles more than anything. I'm curious to see, if anything other than Google, Chrome, for instance, is using Quick. Anyway, I've got another rule in there for NTP, and that's pretty much it. That's all I need, at least at this moment in time. So the idea is we're restricting what internal access is allowed, blocking access to everything else internally. Then we're allowing some access to the internet, and then right at the end, anything that's not defined up here is going to get dropped. And so I've basically just changed those original rules for IPv4 and IPv6 to block traffic. Once for IP version 4, once for IP version 6. So I've just renamed them. So that rule is now applied. And you can see we're getting hits on that one for the management, nothing on that because it's not in use. This computer in particular will be trying to actually get access to the DNS server, but there's nothing there at the minute. It's not trying to get access. Well, looks like there was a potential to try to get access to some other IP addresses. No potential try and get access to the internet yet, but they would show up, and then it would be a case of, if I want to extend this later down the line, I've just got to keep adding in rules, just bearing in mind that internal IP addresses. So for instance, if we go back to the diagram, let's say if I wanted to add in SSH access for these servers, for instance, I would add a rule for that above that blocked rule. If I want to add another rule, say there's some fancy application that I download that needs to get access to something on the internet, I'd put that rule in here, because usually you don't know what the end destination is. That's why I've got to block access to the actual private IPs. That rule, and all the others, they're just too open. So I have to block access to the private IPs first. So that sets up our rules there. Now, I want to take this lockout rule away. So as I say, I've got this rule here and it's allowing access to port 443 for this, specifically for the firewall itself. So I've got choices. I can click on that little cog there and it'll take me where I need to go. You can see it actually tells you on the bottom where we're going to head to, but alternatively what I can do is I can go to System, then to Advanced. If we scroll down here, there's a box which is to disable the anti-lockout rule. So I'm going to disable that rule. And as long as I've set this up properly, it'll still, allow me access. Obviously, if I've got it wrong, well, yeah, I'm basically stuck. Now, the good thing about virtual machines is what I could do is I could actually take a snapshot of this machine. I could, and then roll it back. But I am confident enough to give this a go. My rule that I've put in should work. So I've made the change. Now it's just warning, oh, we're going to redirect you. Now, to be honest, nothing's changed, so it doesn't really matter. But if we go back to here, because it's got to go through its own process of taking these rules out. That's the only thing to bear in mind. When you start, this is like a system rule as opposed to like a rule that we're adding in. So it's got to change something within the system to do anything. So I'm just going to pause it there, and then I'll bring you back once we've got access back into this server. Well, I'm not sure why at this stage I haven't really had time to investigate, but that seemed to it's like hiccup making that change, because what I found was it was taking a long time to do anything. So I ended up closing the web browser down. I opened it back up again, pointed to the actual firewall, and there was the IP, there was the login prompt straight away. Logged in, and then it just, well, nothing. There was nothing happening except it was just basically the wheel was just spinning. I mean, the console was actually showing a successful login straight away. So the firewall was doing something, which implies it's a bit busy. And yet all we've done is we've just added in this, well, we've taken away the anti-lockout rule and added this rule in. It gives you the impression that it's busy up here, maybe on memory. And it's also very, very slow. If I ask to go to the dashboard, it just grinds to a halt. But if I go anywhere else, it's fine. So I'm just going to ignore that for now until I can find the time to figure out what's going on. But at least I can progress with the rest of the stuff I was wanting to do. So anyway, the anti-lockout rule is now gone. We've now got this more specific rule where we can only allow access from that specific LAN network, the management network, specifically to the firewall on these two different ports, port 443, which is what we're on now, plus 33333. So the plan now is to make some other changes. So what I want to do is I just want to go back to advanced again. And this is going through really quickly. Whereas, as I say, for some strange reason, if I go to the dashboard, it grinds to a halt. I suspect it's trying to get access to the internet or something. And the upstream firewalls aren't letting it, so it's probably in a huff or something. Anyway, I'll go back up to the top. So by default, you get access to this firewall on port 443 or 80. We're actually on HTTPS, you can see up there, we're specifically asking it to use that. Now I want to change this port, so I'm going to put in, that should be 5 3s that I've got in there. Yep, 5 3s. So that's in my, that's the one downside when you start moving things while you're holding the mouse button. So I'm changing over to this alternate management port because we don't want to make it blatantly obvious for somebody who wants to try and hack into this firewall how to get access to it. Now, obviously, I'd go with something a lot more complicated than that. As long as it's above 1024 and below 65535, you're into the ephemeral port, so it's fine. So we're changing that. Then what we're going to do is click on the save button, and I'm going to end up going through that same process again, where it's going to take a while. I suspect it's, as I say, it's up to, oh no, well there you go. I take it back. It's suddenly not busy. Okay, so let's try that then. So try it on that particular port. So yeah. So let's just try that. Click on advanced and say, yes, we don't care about the certificate that's on here. So it's trying to redirect by the looks of it over there, but so it's, yeah, it's just busy again. So I mean, if we had a problem, we wouldn't have even gotten this far, to be honest. So I'm just going to pause it there, wait until I can get back get access back in again, and then I'll bring you back. Yeah, I think it was, from what I can tell, I think it's like more of an upstream problem. I mean, you look at, you can't really tell much from, the information that ESXi is telling you. If you look at here, we're hardly using any memory usage, disk usage, CPU usage, but it was really, really busy. Now, upstream, it wasn't getting access to the root DNS servers, it wasn't getting access to NTP. So I've allowed that further upstream, and so far it seems a bit better. It seems to be behaving itself better. I mean, I could still log back into it. It was just taking like forever. And I know when I was running through tests of building this thing, it always used to stick when it was trying to do like run its DNS resolver, and that's where it actually gets access to the root servers. So hopefully that's resolved that issue. But if we go back to our rules, I've actually added in an extra rule just specifically for IP6 to block any of that traffic coming in. But now it's a case of, we've got this rule which is allowing access to these firewall ports, and we're connected on that new management port that I created. I mean, I would go with something a lot less obvious than that one, to be honest, make it as complex as you can. But I'm going to go over to the aliases, because the good thing about this is I don't need to touch the actual rule now. I just need to remove port 443 from the list because it's no longer relevant. So I shall delete that one. We'll click save. We'll click apply. So it actually, updates the rule effectively in the background. So as long as we haven't broken anything, we should still be able to have access, because we're connecting on a different port, so it shouldn't really matter. So yes, a firewall port is just that new management port, and that's it. So we've got all these rules. I mean, you can add all sorts of others, whatever floats your boat, basically, whatever it is actually needed by your systems. And, you want to keep an eye on this. You want to be able to make sure you can, monitor anything that gets dropped. So you'd go over to, if we go to status, and if we go to system logs, there's a lot of system logs you get on there, but specifically for the firewall issues itself, and the the logs where it's logging things that are getting denied and so on, you'd be looking at that firewall part of those logs, and you've got a big long laundry list of here. I mean, this is just a list of at that particular moment in time, but you can actually go over to a dynamic view, and it'll actually start updating this on the fly, telling you what it's trying to get access to. At the moment, this computer is actually trying to get access to the DNS server on TCP. Normally when you do a DNS lookup, it's on UDP. If the packet's too big, it uses TCP, but TCP normally tends to get used for when you're doing zone transfers. So normally I don't normally allow TCP access unless it literally is causing an issue. Now, what you can do is you can actually filter this down if you want. You can filter it down to a specific source address, destination address, whether it was a pass, a block, time, the interface. There's all sorts of different filters you can apply, but it's a great way to be able to troubleshoot things. So what we've done so far is we've set up some very basic rules, but one thing I haven't done yet, and I've changed the management port. One thing I haven't done is I want to change the name of this interface, because I've got like WAN and I've got LAN. I want to change this name from LAN to management, because that's what it is to me. It's a management interface. So I'll just change it. You can see where I've done this before. Now, the interesting thing is it's just a name. You wouldn't think it would cause a problem. So I'm just going to click on save and see if we get it. Yeah, we get an error message. So all I'm doing is I'm just changing the name. It's just a label, but it doesn't like it. So what I've actually got to do, actually I'll just go back to that again. We go back to the LAN interface. This is really weird. It tells you what the error is. So we'll just go back through that process again. We'll look more detail in the error, because I've kind of like jumped the gun. I know what needs to be done, but it's kind of weird. It's saying that the root advertisement server is active on the interface, and it can only be used with a static IP configuration. So it's saying to actually disable them. Now, where you actually need to disable them, if we go over to DHCP to here, DHCP6 server RNA, but it says, well, you can't do that because you haven't got IPv6 enabled. So it's kind of very strange. Just for the sake of changing the name on a, it only seems to be specific to that one interface for some reason. I haven't had issues with other ones, so it's definitely weird. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable IPv6 to fix this. So we'll set this up and say we need a static IPv6 address. I'm just going to put in a fake IP address. We don't care. We'll save the change. And then we've got to apply the change. So technically we are running IPv6 on this interface at the moment. Hopefully it doesn't throw another wobbler and start grinding to a halt again. No, seems okay so far. Right, so now if we go over to services, DHCP version 6 server and RNA, go to the router advertisements tab, because this wasn't there, it wasn't an option before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that over to disabled, so we're no longer running root advertisements on that interface for IPv6. I mean, we weren't even running IPv6 before, but yeah, it is what it is. So we've changed that. We've disabled router advertisements. Then we come back to our interfaces again. So it seems to be a long way around of having to like fix this. So I'll take IPv6 back out again. Actually, while we're at it, I'll change the name. And that's it. We've disabled it. We've finally managed to get our name changed, but we had to disable the IP version 6 router advertisements. Very strange. So as far as interfaces go, we've actually only got 2 of them. We've only got a WAN and a management, but in our diagram, we've actually got 2 other segments. So I need to add these in. So if we come back to this virtual machine here, I'll just minimize that. What I can do is I can edit the virtual machine on the fly. And I can add in 2 more network adapters. So I'm going to put one of them in the infrastructure network. One's going to be in the lab 1 network. I'll click on save. And you probably just notice the console there. It's like, you've made a change. All right, okay, so it's complaining because of the fact that the console's open somewhere else. Interesting. So it's still only showing 2 interfaces, which isn't ideal, but so it's not. It hasn't picked them up. It's not a very plug-and-play operating system, it seems. Or is it? Yeah, it's still... Ah, there you go. It has, I tell a lie. So they're the ones that have been configured as far as the console is concerned, but over here we can see we've actually now got 2 extra interfaces we can configure. So I'm just going to expand these out. So the infrastructure one ends as BC. So that's 2. So because we did these in order, and what I just did 2 of them to begin with, it seems to be lined up where the order of the interfaces here is actually in line with pfSense, whereas last time I tried to build this, if I did all 4 interfaces together, everything got out of sync. So VMX2 is BC, so that lines up. So I'm going to add that one in. Now that's the infra one, but it calls it opt1. And then we've got another one which ends as C6. So that's that one there. So we'll add that one in. So I've added all 4 interfaces onto this firewall now. So if we go back to the interfaces, I can just click that specific one, which is opt1. So that's our infra interface. So we'll just rename that one to infra. For the IPv4 configuration, I've got to give it a static IP address. I'll just see if I've already done this for this particular interface. So that's 17. So the infrastructure 172.16.17.254. We don't need a gateway, but I do have to change the subnet mask there. Yeah, we don't want to be blocking anything on that interface. Actually, I should have enabled that first. So now the interface is enabled. Okay, so then we go back to interfaces again. Go to opt2. So that is our lab 1 interface. So I'll just select that straight away now, so I don't forget. So yep, that's lab 1. We'll go with a static IP address, and that IP address will be the other IP address, which is 172.16.19.254. Let's just double check. 172.16.19.254. So again, I need to change the subnet mask. I mean, there are other options. You can change things like the MTU sizes, segment sizes, that sort of thing if you need to, but we don't, so just leave those as is. Click apply. So I see you notice these didn't complain about changing the name or anything. It just seemed to be specific to the LAN interface. It might be the same on the WAN because those two were enabled initially and DHCP was automatically running on them. As part of the configuration, we actually disabled DHCP, and yeah, the two might go hand in hand with route advertisements, but yeah, it is what it is. So if we now go to interfaces, if we go to assignments, we've now got those interfaces already set. There's no more to add, but what I can do now is I can go over to the firewall rules, for example. So I've now got extra interfaces. So what I'll probably do on these ones is add sort of the equivalent. Well, that one's, yeah, I got a bit confused there. I forgot I've changed that from LAN to management. I can add similar rules to these interfaces where it'd be a case of, yes, you need access to DNS. You don't need access to anything in these ranges. Yes, you need access to these things on the internet. No, you don't need access to anything else. We block it. There isn't a requirement to add access to the firewall though. The only other thing I'll probably be adding in that's different is access to DHCP, for example. Well, except for the infrastructure. The infrastructure network, we wouldn't be doing DHCP through there. We'd only be doing it through that interface. So they're extra rules, but the process is the same. So at the moment, I'm just leaving them as is, which is, it's got this implicit deny on the end of these rules, so they're dropping things at the moment anyway, but I do need to add the extra rules into them. So I'm just going to make sure that this is all running, because there is one other thing I would point out is if you go to diagnostics, the good thing about this is you can do backups and restores. So here you can tell it to back up the configuration. So every time you've made a change, you'll want to back up the configuration. It's usually common practice to actually back up the configuration, make a change, and then back it up again once you've finished. The good thing about it being a virtual machine, though, is you can actually even take a snapshot of it. If anything goes wrong, you've got a chance to restore, basically you'd reinstall a completely fresh version of pfSense and then restore from the configuration file. But because it's a virtual machine, you can just, restore back to the original snapshot you took. So that's extremely useful to have. If you need to ever shut it down, you go to that option there, which is to halt the actual system. I'm just looking for anything else. It's blatantly obvious here that could be useful. I mean, I suppose the other thing, this should in theory have access to the internet now. So if we go over to status, I should be able to get back onto the dashboard again. Yeah, that's a lot quicker now. So it's saying we're on the latest version. So it's able to touch out and reach the internet at a minute. So that's a good sign. If we go to System and Package Manager, we'll see if it's got access to available packages. So now that it's got access to the internet, it's able to get access to all these different packages that come with pfSense. Before, it couldn't do that. So you've basically installed a firewall, but you need to get access to the internet to then be able to pull all these other things down. And there's all sorts of wonderful and useful things on here. I quite like if you're running a physical machine. This is definitely useful if you've got an APC UPS, because you can actually tie it into the UPS, and then if the UPS runs into a power problem, in other words, you lose access to the mains, by having this installed, you can actually get pfSense to shut itself down instead of being, having the power violently pulled and then the machine just crashing. There's all sorts of packages on here. I know you can get other packages, but these are the ones that tend to be more or less approved, that come with pfSense, so you can be pretty confident these ones are going to work. That one is something I'll probably want to install on pfSense just to improve it a bit. The pf blocker is very useful for being able to keep out malware, that sort of stuff, keep away from advertisements and all sorts. They can block those sort of things. Definitely useful, that one. But yeah, all sorts. There's Snort. It's the open source intrusion detection system. Squid, which is a proxy. Yeah, all sorts of stuff in there. I mean, it does like VPNs. You can set up VPNs, like site-to-site VPNs for this. You can set up Open VPN, so you can get basically you can have a computer that's on some remote network, for instance, and you can get remote access to your network through pfSense, for instance, using OpenVN. You've now got WireGuards being added in since this version 2.5 came out. So yeah, it's definitely some useful things. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause the video. I just want to run through a quick check, make sure things are all tickety-boo, just in case there are any problems and if I've got to point them out to you. So yeah, I'll just pause the video. Well, I've been updating the rules on this firewall, or at least on the new interfaces as I've been going along, but I do still need to finish that off. There's going to be rules going to pop up that I'm going to need, as more and more services get added to the lab. But what I've been doing to make my life a bit easier, for instance, so like we've got a rule here to allow access to the DNS servers. So what you can do is if you click on the copy button here, it creates an exact copy of the rule, and it literally is exactly that same rule. But what you can do is you can change, for instance, say I want that on the Lab 1 interface. The source will be the Lab 1 network. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. I want to allow DNS access, so still the same protocol, still the same destination service, still the same domain, name service, port 53 there. Same description and so on, so I can make my life a lot easier by just copying them that way. But yeah, I've been populating those, but it still needs finishing off. Now, there is one thing I want to point out, and that's just to do with the behavior, and that is if we scroll down, the reason I was having DNS issues, I mean, I did set this up. The idea was, if I can find it again, there, we've got this set up to actually go to 172.16.17.10, which is an internal DNS server. Now, I've been scratching my head wondering why is it going out to the internet? Why does it keep trying to connect there? And it's actually because of this. It explains some of the DNS resolver issues I was having. Because what it does is it actually uses itself as a DNS server. And if that doesn't work, it actually then falls back to this DNS server that we've got listed here. So that's why pfSense itself is actually going out to the internet. That's why it's able to get access to the internet and so on, even though that DNS server isn't actually up and running. It's just basically using this configuration here, which says just use yourself. So it's then going off and talking to the internet basically. If we go to, I think it was that's the general setup. If you go to the advanced setup, one thing I'll point out is there's a feature. Yeah, that one there, that feature there is set to be disabled, and that's what we do want. We want to leave it disabled specifically because we've changed to an uncommon port, to access a server through TLS. Otherwise, if that was enabled, it would literally do an automatic redirect, and we don't want that. We don't want to make it obvious as to which port you want to reach this this firewall on. So fortunately, that's a default setting. But I think that's pretty much it. I mean, there's going to be other things I'm going to need to add. I mean, I know at some point, if I go back to my diagram, this network here, it needs to be able to get DHCP services from this server here. Now, normally what happens is a computer will just spin up and it'll send out a broadcast message for an IP address. And we need this firewall to actually redirect that request over to this specific server here. So I'll do that as part of my server build, but if we go to the services, if we go to DHCP Relay, there's an option there to enable DHCP Relay on an interface. So for me, it would be on the Lab 1 interface. And then we point it to 172.16.17.10. 172.16.17. It's actually, yeah, it's 12. There you go. Always double check things. So that enables that feature there. So that basically means that when it sees a broadcast appear on the on that interface for a DHCP request, what it'll do is it'll convert that into a unicast request. So, you know, the broadcast will just go out to every computer in that subnet. The firewall will see it. It'll send a unicast request to this computer here, asking for an IP address, and it'll use its own IP address in that specific subnet as a reference point, basically. And then this computer, what it'll do is it'll go and look in its own pool for an IP address for this subnet and send a response back. And then this firewall will just send it back into the network to let the computer know here's an IP address you can use. And after that, you end up with a unicast connection between this computer and this computer going forward until it comes time to do a complete renewal and so on. But it's something I have to put in there just so I can control things through that DHCP server, which is on a different segment. So that change is now saved. So I'd say that's pretty much it. So what I'm going to do is, before I finish, is I'm just going to back up my configuration. Just tell it to download that file. I mean, there's options you can encrypt it. The recommendation is don't back up the package information, extra data and so on. Just be aware of what it is you need. Just tell it to save that. And that should save that. If that's gone into the download folder. No. So that's interesting. Where has it saved it to? It should have saved it. It should actually ask me where I wanted to download it to. Yeah, because you can open it. Oh, there you go. Maybe I clicked on cancel. I don't know. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. We've now got a backup of this configuration. But what I'm also going to do is take an actual snapshot of this machine. So I'm going to shut it down. I mean, I can either do it through the GUI, but I can also do it through the console. So I'll just minimize that. Because you can take snapshots of an actual computer while it's live, but it's better to do it when it's shut down. So at least in this case, I'm just going to tell it to halt the system. Yes, we do want to proceed. So it goes through the process and it starts to shut itself down. The only reason I'm doing it just through the console is just because I can then see it more clearly. If you do it through the browser, I don't necessarily know when it's actually finished. So we'll just get it to shut itself down, and then what I'll do is I'll just take a snapshot of this virtual machine as a backup. Right, so that's now finished. So if we go to actions, then we can take a snapshot. So we'll take a snapshot, just say base snapshot. Just give it a name. And then off it goes. It just takes a snapshot of that actual machine. So the good thing is then is you've got an option. Once it's actually got an actual snapshot, you can actually restore the snapshots. You've got options to manage the snapshots. You can consolidate it, because normally snapshots aren't intended to be like long term. The idea is, you know, you take a snapshot, do some changes, and then you consolidate into that finished version. But it's still useful to have something to fall back on at some point. And I'm pretty much finished with this firewall for now, so I'm leaving that snapshot there for now. But that's it for this particular video. I do hope you really found it useful. Very useful firewall as pfSense, I must admit, and it's a case of, yeah, it gives me that security within a lab here. Very easy to pretty much set up, just your typical firewall. It's one of these ones where you configure the rules on the actual interfaces as opposed to setting up zones, for instance. You've just got to put a rule on every single interface to decide what goes in or out. But yeah, I really like it. I must admit, a great open source firewall to use. Well, thanks for making it to the end of this video. I really do hope you found it useful. If so, then do click the like button and share, because that encourages YouTube's algorithm to suggest it to other people who might find it useful as well. If you're new to the channel and you'd like to see more content like this, then yeah, do subscribe. Just remember to click the little bell icon though, that way you'll get notifications when I send new content out. If you've got any comments, any suggestions, if you want to leave any feedback at all, please post that in the comments section below. And if you'd like to support the channel, I've left links to both Patreon and PayPal in the description below. But above all, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.